The little cafe of lost letters, tucked away at the corner of a quiet street where the city's hum softened to gentle whispers, stood a little cafe called the Velvet Spoon. It wasn't the biggest cafe, nor the most modern, but it had something special, something you could feel the moment you stepped inside. The air always smelled of cinnamon and warm vanilla, the kind of scent that wrapped around you like a soft blanket. The walls were lined with wooden shelves, filled with books that no one had claimed and letters that had never reached their destinations. And behind the counter, smiling as if she had all the time in the world, was Margot, the owner. Margot believed in little things, the warmth of a well-made drink, the comfort of a handwritten note, the way a simple act of kindness could change a day. That's why many years ago she had started something unusual. She collected lost letters. It had started with just an envelope left behind on a table, its ink smudged from rain. Instead of throwing it away, Margot had placed it on a shelf, just in case someone came back for it. Then another letter arrived, slipped through the door without a return address. Over time, more letters found their way to the Velvet Spoon. Some were found tucked inside secondhand books. Others were dropped accidentally by hurried hands. Some were decades old, their paper fragile as autumn leaves. Instead of hiding them away, Margot gave them a home. She placed them on display, letting customers read them while sipping their coffee. And something beautiful happened. People started leaving letters on purpose. Notes of encouragement, words of hope, small confessions of love or kindness, all written and left behind for strangers to find. No one knew who started the tradition, but soon it became part of the cafe's magic. One rainy evening, Daniel stumbled into the cafe, soaked from head to toe. He wasn't planning to stop, just to step in for a moment, warm his hands, and escape the storm. But then he saw the letters. Curious, he picked one at random. The paper was old, the ink slightly faded, but the words still held their warmth. "You are doing better than you think. Keep going. You are stronger than the storms you faced." Daniel blinked. His hands, still trembling from the cold, gripped the letter tighter. He didn't know who had written it. He didn't know if it had been left there yesterday or 10 years ago. But somehow, it felt like it had been waiting just for him. Margot, watching from behind the counter, gave him a knowing smile. "First time reading one?" Daniel nodded. "Yeah, he struggled to find the right word." "Like a little bit of magic?" she offered. He laughed softly. "Yeah, exactly." That was how Daniel became a regular. He started coming in once a week, reading letters over a cup of warm hazelnut coffee. Some made him smile, a note about a grandmother learning to use emojis for the first time. Others made him think words from a traveler who had left a letter behind at every city they visited. One day, he found a note that simply read, "If you're feeling lost, don't worry. Sometimes the best things find you when you're not looking." He sat there for a long time, staring at those words, because deep down, he knew he had been feeling lost for a while. And maybe, just maybe, this little cafe had found him at exactly the right moment. One day, Daniel did something he never expected. He picked up a pen and wrote a letter of his own. He didn't sign it. He didn't know who would find it. He just wrote from the heart. "Hey, you. I don't know what you're going through, but I do know this. There is more kindness in the world than we sometimes see. More good days waiting for you than bad ones chasing you. Take a deep breath. You're doing okay. And no matter what, you are not alone." He folded the note, tucked it between two books on the shelf, and left the cafe feeling a little lighter. Months passed, seasons changed. Margot kept serving warm drinks, and the letters kept finding their way into the hands of those who needed them most. Some customers came and went, but others like Daniel became part of the cafe's quiet rhythm. One evening, as the golden light of autumn faded outside, Daniel sat in his usual corner, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. He hadn't picked up a letter yet, content just to sit and listen to the soft hum of conversation. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a young woman enter. She hesitated near the shelves, eyes scanning the collection of lost words. Her shoulders were hunched as if carrying something heavy, something invisible but undeniable. She reached out, plucked a note from between two books, and unfolded it carefully. Daniel watched as her eyes moved across the page. Slowly, her expression softened. She let out a quiet breath, a mixture of relief and surprise. And then, just for a moment, she smiled. Something about that moment struck Daniel in a way he couldn't explain. He had seen people find comfort in those letters before, but this time something felt different. Because he recognized the way her fingers held the paper. He recognized the way her shoulders relaxed. And when she carefully tucked the letter into her pocket, he realized she had found his note. The woman sat at a table near the window, her coffee growing cold as she stared outside. It was clear she was lost in thought, turning over the words she had just read. Daniel hesitated. Should he say something? Would it be strange to admit he had written that letter, meant for no one, and yet somehow meant for her? But before he could decide, Margot appeared beside him, placing a fresh cup of coffee on his table. On the house, she said with a knowing smile. For a writer, Daniel chuckled. I'm not a writer. Margot simply raised an eyebrow. Aren't you? He looked at the woman by the window again, the letter still tucked safely in her pocket. Maybe in a way he was. Winter arrived, dusting the city in white. The velvet spoon stayed warm, glowing with candlelight and the quiet comfort of old books and friendly faces. Daniel kept coming back, but so did the woman. They never spoke, not directly. But sometimes their eyes would meet in a quiet understanding. A small nod, a brief smile, a silent acknowledgement that, in some strange way, they had already shared something. Then, one evening, as Daniel reached for a new letter from the shelf, he found something unexpected, a fresh note tucked neatly between the pages of a book. His breath caught as he unfolded it. Asterisk, hey, you. I don't know if you'll ever see this, but thank you. Your words found me when I needed them most. I was having a bad day. A bad month. Daniel's heart pounded as he read the note. I was having a bad day, a bad month really, and then I found your letter. It reminded me that kindness still exists, that good days are still ahead, even when I can't see them yet. So, thank you. Whoever you are, you made a difference. He stared at the paper for a long moment, a warmth blooming in his chest. Then, slowly, he turned toward the woman by the window. She was watching him now, her expression unsure but hopeful. For the first time, Daniel didn't hesitate. He stood, walked over, and gently placed the letter back on the table in front of her. You're welcome, he said softly. She blinked, then smiled, really smiled this time. And just like that, two strangers who had once spoken only through lost letters finally began a new conversation. Winter melted into spring, and the velvet spoon remained a place of warmth, letters, and quiet magic. Daniel and Emma, as he soon learned her name, became more than just two people exchanging words on paper. They became friends. They talked over coffee, laughed at the notes people left behind, and even started writing letters of their own, ones meant for the world, and ones just for each other. One evening, as the sun dipped below the city skyline, Emma reached into her coat pocket and pulled out his letter, the one she had kept since the day she found it. I read this on my worst days, she admitted. It reminds me that I'm not alone. Daniel looked at her, his heart full. You never were. And in that moment, he realized something. Somewhere along the way, between lost letters and warm cups of coffee, between quiet moments and kind words, he had stopped feeling lost too. And maybe, just maybe, the velvet spoon hadn't just given him a place to sit. It had given him a place to belong. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness, an unseen letter, a warm cup of coffee, a quiet smile can change someone's world. If you ever feel lost, remember this: you are not alone. The right words, the right people, and the right moments have a way of finding you just when you need them most.